Om Shanti. Good afternoon from San Francisco. I know there are people from many different time zones, so welcome to everyone. And we are having twice a week the explorations of the Murli on Sundays and Wednesdays. So I would like to approach the Murli today in perhaps a way that may be different from what you normally anticipate and expect. And whenever we read the Murli or listen to the Murli, it's always in the context of that day and of whatever is going on in your thoughts and your experience. And in the Murli today, Baba has talked about love a great deal at the beginning. And it is Baba's method when he wants to make people ready to hear something like what he calls a big dose. He will prepare the patient as the supreme doctor to be open to the dose. And so what makes us more open than this, to hear how much Baba loves us, and then we will open up, and then he wants to put something in that normally we might not be open to. So when he's giving us love, we have to understand that there are many things happening along with the anticipation that, oh, I will receive Baba's love. There have been many times when Baba has said that my love for you is to give you the knowledge. And the knowledge is also called the inheritance. This is the property of God, is the knowledge. And there isn't anyone else in the world at any time in history who has the ownership of this information. And this is also sometimes called the third eye. And as we know, the story of immortality, the story of the third eye, and the story of true Narayan. Basically, he gives us the knowledge in a certain context, and that context is that it's the end of the world cycle. Therefore, ourselves and our circumstances and the natural world and human society, all of that is in a tamopradhan state. And in response to the call of the devotees of all and every religion, the call that they make to God is for purification. And purification is why he comes, to purify us and also to restore us to our original condition. So there's purification and there's renovation. And the analogy that he gives for purification is the gold, which has got alloy in it. And the only way to get that gold in its pure form is to put the gold in a crucible and subject it to great heat. And so sometimes you hear of the fire of yoga. And the fire of yoga is your love for Baba, but it is also the purification process, which is a heat of the passion of your love for Baba while being in the fire that pulls out the alloy, which is also pulling out all of the impurities and the what is called sin or negative karma. And so he speaks. I'm going to read for you the Murli notes, which is something that I do every day as far as possible, not actually every day, but many days, where I extracted from today's Avyakt Murli those points which correspond to giving us the answers to a question that many people have. And this question is one that I have been looking at with a number of people that I work with. And the question is, in many people's minds, that we are experiencing suffering, mental suffering, physical suffering, financial suffering, relational suffering, and we don't like suffering. And if you tell somebody that you're suffering, they also don't like that you're suffering, and they feel that, and everybody feels, both the sufferer and those who know about the suffering, they feel that that suffering should end. And the devotional people, the religious people, they think of God as the person who removes their suffering, because after all, he is called the bestower of happiness and the remover of sorrow. But there's a difference between the remover of sorrow and the remover of suffering, although you might not think so, but there is. So the thing is, he makes us like himself. He says, you must become Bap Saman, you must become equal to me. And so that means you must become pure. And the process of going from impure to pure is purification, but purification is not pleasant. It is good, but good does not necessarily mean pleasant. A lot of times we would like it to mean pleasant, and sometimes it does mean pleasant. But when Baba begins the Murli by giving a great deal of love, it's a prelude to some information that he's going to be giving us a little later in the Murli, where he's addressing our relationship with the difficulties, unpleasantness, suffering, and so on that are experienced in the context of the study and practice of Raj Yoga. And people find it very difficult to really think about that, you know, if this is God and God is love, then all of this should be like a nice bowl of cherries. And that's very, very often it is a nice bowl of cherries, but the study and practice of Raj Yoga is not really for experiencing pleasantness where everybody else is having more difficulties than us. In many cases, we do, but basically this is for purification. And what we sign up for when we become Raj Yogis is for purification. And Baba from time to time says, you called me to purify you. I am the purifier of the impure. And in pretty much all the prayers of all the religions all over the world, people ask God for purification. Sometimes they ask for forgiveness, and they ask for mercy. But the important is that God very often says, I have come, I am the purifier of the impure, and I am here to purify you. So the sustenance from the three major relationships is extremely pure. This word sresht is there. So sresht can mean elevated, but also pure. So this sustenance is provided to you while you are in the midst of many different types of people. So this is called Sahaj Raj Yoga. Sahaj Raj Yoga, the word Sahaj is normally translated as easy, but there are other possible translations, other interpretations of the word Sahaj, which is in opposition to the Raj Yoga that is taught and practiced by the sannyasis. And they also speak about Raj Yoga, but it's a different Raj Yoga. And they do this in isolation. So Sahaj means in the context of people. And for a BK Raj Yogi, living in the context of people, the people that you are in the context with are people with whom you have karmic accounts. And so this practice is done in the context of people. And when you are living in the context of people, then you experience different types of irritation, distress, upset, many kinds of negative feelings are provoked by the settlement of karma through relationships. So he says, remember that you have received blessings from the Satguru. So we have to spend a little time to think about what are these blessings that we have received from him. And sometimes he talks about the titles that he's given us as blessings. So the titles that we have are many, and in every Murli you will hear a few titles. And one that comes very, very often is you are Swadarsan Chakradhari, which means that you possess the knowledge of the cycle of the self. And you have to rotate that. And you have to rotate it fast. And the cycle of the knowledge of the self it corresponds to the cycle of the moon. And so the moon, when it is 16 celestial degrees, that's the full moon. And then as the first half of the month passes, it goes from 16 to 0. And as you, the soul, pass through the whole cycle, you also go from 16 to 14 to 8 to 0. And so spinning the cycle means to go rapidly from full illumination to absolute darkness. And this is constantly spinning. And when you spin light and dark together all the time, you get something which is pretty much light. And if you think about light as being something that exists and darkness as being the absence of light, then something that exists dominates or has more power over something that is the absence of that. When we're experiencing suffering, negativity, not being treated the way that we want to be treated, and all of the various different things that happen in relationships that could be called negative, people have these questions of why is this happening? And when you experience something that you don't like, there is a tendency to look for who is to blame, and think that it is that person's fault or that organization's fault or something like this. But then what Baba tells us is that whatever is happening to you, you're experiencing it through your sense perception in your mind. So in your mind, you will say to yourself, this experience that I'm having is pleasant or unpleasant. And of course, when we're in Gyan, one thing that Baba gives us is the 8 powers. And the 8 powers are particularly useful at times when things are difficult and you're experiencing suffering or difficulties in relationships or any kind of problem, mental, physical, financial. All these problems are experienced in your mind through your sense perception, and it takes over your sense of self. And so what Baba is giving us is information which can be an instrument to enable us to get through such trials in the best possible way. And that is your skill as a Raj Yogi, to be able to cultivate, develop, get good at the use of the powers and handle all of the adversities that come your way. So when you sign up for Raj Yoga, usually when we advertise any program, we say you will have peace of mind, you will be happy, you will be empowered, and all of these things. And that's true. But what we don't say in the advertising, and what we very often don't say to anyone really, is that once you start doing this, then all sorts of difficulties will come and you will be tested and all of this. So we don't tell people about this, but it's there. And the question is, should we or shouldn't we tell people about this? But anyway, once you've started this, once you've recognized Baba, and you throw down the gauntlet to Maya, then of course you will begin to experience the opposition of Maya and all sorts of things like this. So he says the habit of making something easy into something difficult, something sahaj, something easy, into something difficult, is that you do not take on the blessings, but you doubt that the blessings are real and valid. Think about it. He says, you are the light of my eyes, you are the ones who live in my heart, you are the ancient deity souls, you are the kings of kings. All of these are blessings. So, but you don't really believe it, or you don't believe it to the point where you make it useful. But he says, don't doubt, because you doubt these things and then you believe the social conditioning and messages to the contrary that you receive from society, whether it's the Lokik world or whether it's the Alokik world. So when you experience anything negative, then it becomes an effort for you to suppress your negative feelings that get provoked by messages that diminish you and attempt to make you think low of yourselves. Definitely, you must from time to time hear someone tell you that, your stage is not very good, you are not following the maryadas properly, or even if someone doesn't tell you, but they will tell you, you have to be perfect, you have to be constantly soul conscious, and you consult your conscience and you say that, well, I'm not this, therefore I am just not really very likely to be all the things that Baba says. So you have to handle that situation in a wise way. And this is what this Murli is all about. That when you don't absorb and accept and take on the blessings that Baba has given to you, then those messages that you get from your social conditioning, from remarks that people say around you. And then you have negative feelings, which is difficult to suppress. And then when you're suppressing them, of course, they're going to come out somewhere. So you adopt the weaknesses of those around you and you become weak like them. So he says, don't do that. Instead, you need to absorb and accept the blessings of the Satguru, which give you the mental power and the perspective to affirm yourself. So affirming yourself is a very important thing, but don't expect everyone around you to encourage you to affirm yourself. You may find many people around you who discourage that, who want you to comply, who want you to be humble. And this expression, be humble, can be used to make you just not affirm yourself in the name of humility. And just because somebody tells you that you're arrogant doesn't mean that you actually are. So you have to check. And if somebody's telling you something that isn't true, then don't take it on. Just because someone tells you, it doesn't mean they're telling you the truth. So these blessings, which give you the mental power and perspective to affirm yourself, means that things that seemed difficult, and you have a feeling, you perceive them as difficult, but then you see them through different eyes and you see that they are obvious fabrications. Someone's not telling you the truth. It's so clear that you don't take it on. Then it's very easy to manage. Baba does not dislike your weaknesses. Many people will say Baba doesn't like this and Baba doesn't like that, but that's their idea. That's not Baba's idea. Baba does not dislike your weaknesses, but he feels compassion. And he provides you with the perspective. Perspective means the angle, the way that you look at something. You have to look at it in such a way that you take advantage. So he gives you that perspective, and he gives you the skills to handle situations that trigger your vulnerability. Everybody's vulnerable somewhere. They have some or another vulnerability. Now, some people will not take advantage of your openness and vulnerability. You trust people, you become open and vulnerable because you trust them. But if you trust everybody, then some of them might take advantage of you. So do not be deceived in this or naive, but you must discern the intentions of others. You know, some people are very naive and they say, well, if all BKs are pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful beings of light, then they will not take advantage of me. You see, that's if. And everybody is like that, but not everybody is soul conscious all the time. And you know that. Now Baba says, Baba is very well aware of your horoscope. So this horoscope that Baba's talking about refers to the influences that affect you. And the influences affecting you are connected with your karma and your karmic accounts. So Baba very often says you take birth according to your karma. That means your horoscope, which is the moment of your birth, the positioning of the stars and all, is something that can be read. And you can discern where your susceptibilities are, where your weaknesses are, all your karmic accounts and so on, so that you're not in some mysterious situation and you don't understand why things are happening to you. It's all because of the influences. So that means that Baba knows all your karmic bondages and which people can bring you under their influence. Because there are many people who like to bring others under their influence. This is totally normal in human society. Now, some of you manage to become immune to the influence of those who seek to control you, and you need to learn this skill. So check your horoscope. You got born into a specific Lokik and a specific Alokik family. You know, when you came in Gyan, you came in a particular center through a particular BK or gathering of BKs, and you're connected with that center, and you do service with the other BKs, and you have a relationship with the Yagya via that center, or you may move from one center to another. And all of this is starts off, you're born somewhere, Lokik and Alokik. So this is a place where the people are specially designed to provoke you and to cause your deepest weaknesses to emerge and erupt repeatedly. And so obviously you don't like that, because nobody wants their weaknesses to emerge and erupt repeatedly. So generally people think that the person who is provoking your weakness is the bad guy. But if you didn't have those weaknesses, then that person wouldn't have any impact. It's only possible because you have a weakness, and that person is particularly suited to provoke it. And Baba wants us to understand our weaknesses, because if we don't understand our weaknesses, then we can't deal with them. And he wants us to use the power of transformation to turn our weaknesses into strengths, or at least to know how to handle them and not be taken down by our weaknesses every time they get provoked. So you consider these people to be a negative influence and you try to resist them. But this means that you haven't understood the importance of the situation. Baba says all the time we are actors and we have a role in this drama. And when you're actors, you have to act according to the situation and according to the character that you're playing. And so the situation that you find yourself in has to be played a certain way. And you can play it well, or you can play it badly, you can play it strongly, you can play it weakly. That's up to your acting capacity. So when you interpret the situation as it's a bad situation and you react to it, then that doesn't look very good. So you have to understand that the situation is there so that you can learn how to handle a situation where you're not very good at handling it. So you become good at it. And it'll repeat until you get it. So a substantial percentage of your vulnerability to being reactive is that you adopted those people's weaknesses into yourself. So they do something negative and you react negatively to their negativity. He's saying, why are you doing that? You don't have to do that. So this makes you far more vulnerable and affected by their negative behavior. And consequently, it compels you to make far more effort to resist them. And at the same time, you get bound to them ever more tightly, because the more you have negative thoughts about them, the more you get karmic bondage with them. So you have to watch out for this. So you need to understand this phenomenon clearly in order to extricate yourself from it. So be vigilant and avoid inattention. Our problem a lot of the time is we're not paying attention. We're not aware that we are in an environment where anything can happen any moment. And if you are vigilant and attentive, you will not get trapped. Have greater value for your dignity. Discern the game that's going on at any given moment, and do not allow yourself to get manipulated, trapped, or caught. Lack of proper vigilance is the cause of your suffering, not the other person, not the organization, not any of these things. They're just like data. This is a given. And your suffering comes from lack of proper vigilance. This is a very important thing to think about. Acquire the skill to discern the game. Acquire suitable responses to the efforts others make to entrap you. Maintain your freedom and independence. You know, some people, they react to difficult conditions by diminishing themselves. And some people react to it by being aggressive. These are equally bad in the sense that you get equally trapped and equally it doesn't succeed. So there's something else that has to be done. So Baba says, maintain your freedom and independence. When Baba uses the word Swaraj, which we always translate as self-sovereignty, another meaning of that is independence. So do not be dependent, be independent and free. So whatever is going on around you, it doesn't mean that it has to take you over or swamp you or overwhelm you unless you allow it to. So maintain your freedom and independence. Remain stable on your seat of self-honor. I like better the word self-honor than self-respect. Swaman is really self-honor. Do you know who you are? Do you know your importance? Do you know your value? Do you respect yourself? Do you honor yourself? So sit on that seat and be stable. You are not a child. Many people will try to treat you as a child and make you go into that child mode. And people have very effective tricks for doing that. This is just quite a common little trick that is used widely in many parts of the world. But don't go for that. Don't fall for that trick. You're not a child. And this doesn't mean to be hypervigilant. Regardless of any limitations of time, resources, and circumstances, regardless of those, the vigilant one receives special help and support from the Father in the context of the family. But if you don't notice it, if you don't take advantage of it, what can Baba do? He gives it to you. So notice it, take it on board, and use it. So when you're vigilant, you catch it, and then you find it quite easy to handle the situations that arise. You play the shots effectively, and you win the game. Baba says it's a game. You will have things thrown at you. This is normal, but you need to be able to play the ball back. All social situations are power struggles. You may not agree with this, you may not like the idea, but it is like that. It is about power struggles. So, what to do? Understand how to remain in your power and remain free from getting taken over and then enjoy a suitable position. You have to position yourself, otherwise others will position you. So obviously, when social interaction is a power struggle, people will position you in an inferior position vis-a-vis themselves. But if you position yourself, at least as an equal, then they can't do anything about that. So that's a good idea. Understand that all these circumstances and behaviors that arise exist only to make you aware of your weak strategies that make you unnecessarily vulnerable. So desist from that way of conducting yourself. Don't act like that. It's not working. Don't do that. And take care of yourself and function in the social circumstances as an empowered individual. You have everything you need to do that. So do it. And an empowered person is not an aggressive person or a forceful person. If someone is aggressive and forceful, it's a sign of weakness. But a person who's empowered knows exactly who they are and what they have to do, and they maintain their stage, and they get done what has to be done, and everything is fine. No need to be aggressive. That doesn't prove that you're empowered. Rather, it proves that you're weak. So don't be afraid of aggressive people. So understand that all these circumstances and behaviors that arise exist only to make you aware of your weak strategies that make you unnecessarily vulnerable. Desist from that way of conducting yourself, take care of yourself, and function as an empowered individual. Do not be afraid to assert yourself. Being assertive is not the same as being aggressive. So you have to really spend time thinking, what does it mean to assert who I am? That's something to churn over. The situations and circumstances that arise, whether in Lokik or Alokik, in the worldly or the BK social environments, they exist to enable you to become skilled in antagonistic circumstances and stand up for yourself. So very often when a person stands up for themselves, they will be accused of being arrogant. Don't buy into that. They will be told to be humble. And when you're told to be humble in that situation, it's a manipulation, because it's nothing to do with arrogance or humility. You have a right to stand up for yourself, but you have to know how to stand up for yourself and when to stand up for yourself. So this is something very important to learn in the BK world, how to be assertive, but really not being aggressive. And it doesn't mean that you're being disrespectful. So sometimes people will get you very confused because they will prevent you from being assertive by accusing you of arrogance or rudeness or something like this. But you need to know that what they're accusing you of is false, and don't buy into it. So you need very good power of discrimination to capture whether somebody's telling you the truth or not the truth. So a Sahaj yogi means to maintain your position of being self-empowered and in contact with God while in social situations that may be adversarial. So sometimes you are in those social situations, but stay in your power, stay with Baba, be aware of all the knowledge that you have, and don't be pulled away from yourself. That means don't give away your power. That's very important. As healthy relationships come like this. So the metaphor for this story, for this situation, is the story of the elephant who is rendered mad and then unconscious when an ant enters into his ear. So you are a Raj Yogi, great, and all of that. But when some little word comes into your ear that sort of sets off a certain type of negative conditioning that you have bought into or been trained in, then it takes you away from yourself. It makes you forget all the things that you know, and you get a very strong negative reaction, like moral indignation, something like this. And then you become unconscious. That is to say, you do not use your clarity to see that the situation is fake, false, fabricated, and it's a game. It's a manipulation that you fell into. So don't, because you are a Maharati. So don't get taken down by an ant. And notice the ants, because they're not so, they may look small, but they can do a lot of damage. So be careful about ants. So check your horoscope, your karmic accounts, and your tendency to get in trouble with certain types of people who are in your social environment specially designed to defeat you. So they're supposed to be there because they're supposed to let you know that you have a certain weakness and you better do something about it, because if you don't, you're going to get taken out. So this is, I think, an aspect of Baba's love, that he says, look, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position here. You're putting yourself in danger, and you're likely to do some wrong action, which is going to put you in trouble because you're not paying attention. You're not understanding what's going on. So recognize your vulnerabilities and protect yourself from such Achilles heels. So Achilles heel, this is referring, for those who don't know, to the Greek mythology. And Achilles was one of these demigods and gods of the Greek mythology. And when he was born, his mother wanted him to be immortal because all these gods were warriors as well. And so she held him by the heel and dipped him into this water of immortality. But where she was holding onto him, the water didn't go. And so he eventually got killed by an arrow in his heel. And so we use in the Western world very often this expression, the Achilles heel, means that's where you're weak, that's where you're vulnerable. So in Raj Yoga, it's a pilgrimage, it's a war, it's many things. And why I took up this angle on today's Murli is because there are a lot of people who are questioning how come all these negative experiences are happening, how come I'm having difficulties with these various different people, whether lokik or alokik, and that these questions arise, and then one tends to point the finger at the person or organization or whatever it is that you are experiencing difficulties with, and then you say that they're the problem. And Baba says, no, they're not the problem. They've been put there specially to give you a hard time, because you need a hard time in order to become aware of how you put yourself in a situation where you get into trouble because you're not paying attention, or because you're not studying this knowledge as it needs to be studied. And so this is really churning. And of course, everyone will interpret every Murli according to their angle on the day and angle on Baba and everything. It's very, very personal. But I'm telling you these things because I think it's very important to understand what I started calling the dark side of the sun. You know, we think that God is great, God is good, God is love, God is beautiful. And so if you come to God, everything will be pleasant. But that's because we don't understand that when you come to God, his job is to take out all the impurities. And you know that sometimes he gives the analogy of the Ayurvedic doctor. And one of the 12 Jyotirlingams of Shiva in India is Vaidyanath, the Lord of the medicine. And so he gives the Murli, which is also medicine. And this medicine of the Murli causes the illness to erupt. And the illness of the soul is the weakness, the vulnerability, the not having understood things right, getting mixed up between what God is saying with what people are saying. You know, because there are many people who will say, and Baba thinks like this, and Baba does that, and Baba wants this, and Baba wants that. We have to check it against the Murli, because maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. And churning the Murli means going deep into it and really reading between the lines, reading between the words. And then you can extract the secrets. So what I'm going to try to do with these bi-weekly hours on exploring the Murli is to try to show you some of these things, which I think are very empowering and very useful. And I think it's important for a person to be able to take power and assert themselves such that you can handle any kind of difficult situation that comes along, whether it's fair or not fair, doesn't really matter. Whether it's, you know, you feel you deserve it or not, it's nothing like that. It's take all of these things as tests of your faith, tests of your power, and circumstances which oblige you to empower yourself and to come up with a response which makes you the victorious jewel. And this is another one of the blessings. You are a victorious jewel. So now get on with it in this or that difficult situation. And any time if you fail, which is of course a lot of the time, that's okay. Because we have a tendency to learn from our failures. We don't learn so easily from our successes. And where we have a very deep-seated vulnerability or weakness, well, we want to understand it. We want to be free from it. And the only way that we can really see it playing out is when there's someone who will provoke it, or some situation who will provoke it, whether within the Brahman world or outside, it's fine. You know, Baba will use as an instrument anyone who will make it possible for us to understand what our problem is, and then he gives us the solutions, he gives us the blessings, but we have to apply them. He's not going to do our work for us. He's the teacher. We're the students. He's the father. And so his inheritance that he gives us is the knowledge and the power to apply the knowledge and become the victorious jewels that the Satguru has given us as a blessing. And so I hope that this is useful for you and helpful.
You mentioned that people sometimes treat you like a child, but don't fall for that. Can you explain? Child. What is treating someone like a child?
Sometimes it's patronizing. And because you see in Gyan, there are many teachers who say, we are children, and we are sweet, sweet children. And it kind of makes everybody revert back to when they're 2 years old. And part of being respectful is to accept the positioning that they position you as. So if they'll say, oh, you know, Sukanya, you're such a baby, and I understand and I can see that you're so weak and you're such a baby. And so either you will get very aggressive about that or you will fall into it. And so there are many people who have been castigated a lot. And so they tend to fall into that baby role in order to avoid getting castigated. And that means punished. And if you are very aggressive about it, then they'll accuse you of being arrogant. And so you, as a good BK, want everybody to think that you're pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light. And if anybody accuses you of being a bad BK when you are needing to assert yourself, they would diminish you, and they'll make you suppress yourself and not stand up for yourself. And this is a well-established, quite sophisticated trick that a lot of people use. And you just need to understand that game and don't fall for it. Because it's used more in some cultures, but it's not used much in the Western culture. So the Western people don't have much defense against it. In cultures where it's used, you know all the tricks to get through it and get past it. But otherwise, these are methods of manipulating people. And so you need to understand what's going on. This is called the game. And then don't fall for it.
Baba says sweet children and not my children or my child, even though when we belong to him?
When he says sweet children, it's assumed that there isn't some other Supreme Father. There's only one Supreme Father. So all of the sweet children are his. But, bacha in Hindi means son. And sweet means cherished. I value you. So when you use the word sweet children, immediately people can easily get positioned as little 2-year-olds, and some people kind of fall for it, but that's not really what's going on here. He has great love for us and great importance for us, and he has selected us and called us. But it doesn't mean that he thinks that we're 2-year-olds. And so do not adopt that or let anybody talk to you as if you are a little 2-year-old, because that is not going to get you very far.
Being vigilant and attentive and will not get trapped, which I know we BKs, we are introverted, we are so conscious. How much more important would it be to be be aware of the outside and inside, or should there be a balance? Should there be a balance of in and out to be vigilant, or is it more to be on?
I think that not very many BKs know what is the meaning of soul conscious. So you can interpret it on many levels, from the most superficial to the most subtle. And this is why we have so many years in Gyan, because we take it in quite a simple way initially, but then, you have to really go deep, and it takes a long time to really get what is soul conscious, because people will say, well, if you're quiet and silent, it means you're soul conscious. It doesn't. If you're quiet and silent, you're quiet and silent, body conscious or soul conscious. But if you're soul conscious, you'll be independent of your body. You'll be independent of your conditioning. You'll be independent of your gender, your race, your culture, and you'll be really on the same level as God. Now, it takes a long time to get there. And I think a lot of people take these words, which are fairly simple words, and they think, well, it's a simple word, so it must be easy, especially since this is easy Raj Yoga. And then we end up limiting ourselves to understanding it in a quite superficial way, and we don't take the time to really go deep. So being introverted, so living on the inside of your face, antarmukhi, means you're living on the inside of your face, and you're really so independent of your role and all of the sense of identity that is going on in the interaction between yourself and others, whether in the Lokik world or the BK world. It doesn't really make that much difference. People are mostly pretty body conscious most of the time, because to be soul conscious is not easy. It's very deep. And I think it's useful for us to have this kind of gathering together so that we can think about it, maybe, and deepen it, maybe go a bit more subtle. And so I will be looking at these Murlis in such a way as to hopefully tell you things that maybe you haven't looked at it quite like that before. Because when we do things in a repetitive way, then you don't go deep. But if you look at it from a very new angle and maybe use different words or something, then it helps you to think about it in a new way, and then you get it, and this I call this an insight. And then we kind of move along in our practice, and then a lot of people, they feel stale in their yoga practice after a while, and then you need some trouble, you need some blocks to force you to go up to a higher level, and this is work. I think it's very deceptive to think of this as easy Raj Yoga, therefore you don't have to make any effort. It's not easy. It's not different from being the Olympic champion in this sport or that sport. I mean, they have to be very focused on getting very good at it. And then each of us has to decide, at what level do I want to do this? And it's not about what somebody else thinks about me, because everyone is so different. And nobody is my judge except Shiv Baba, and not any other BK or any non-BK or whatever. They don't know what's going on in my soul. Thank you. And if they tell you they do, they're lying, So really, honor yourself. I think honoring yourself is a very important thing. And then decide, okay, as the degree to which I recognize myself and honor myself as Baba's child, how do I want to do this, and how well do I want to do this? And you're in the context of lots of other people, but you're still on your own with God, I think that's a good approach. Okay, so let us have a few moments with Baba, and thank you all very much for being on the in the group, and look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.